Good morning.
Good morning. I hope you get to feeling better. How much water you can drink, orange juice, whatever you can hold down. Hope you get to feeling better.
Gotta play hurt. I'll play hurt though.
You're playing injured, man. And we're gonna have a fun show today. We got Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports covers.
I'm so
Georgia.
excited to talk to him about Trevor Etienne.
Yeah, I mean, good Lord. You know the way I look at it, that's a story, but Lord have mercy, man. There's a bunch to cover, but in today's world, get an Uber. That's all I can say. Hey, we also have Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net. Will check in with us, as well as Gary Harris in the later part of the show. Tide 100.9 WVUA TV in Tuscaloosa, Bama, getting ready for the Sweet 16. Starts tomorrow night. Happy Easter. It's Holy Week. Lot to cover. Smash the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. And tell your friends, your family, your neighbors about SEC Sideline Sports Network and SECU. And allow notifications on your Android or iPhone. Brendan, let's get this ship righted. Here we come. We'll be right back.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right. Jordan Davis Hill, newly married. That is fun. Nothing will wake you up in the morning more than when you have 3 or 4 kids running around the house, other than being on SEC Sideline Sports Network. Of course, you're an hour earlier. You've probably been up running, working out, and chasing stories up there. And, hey, spring practice, you had pro day going on at Georgia. And before we get to that, I want to ask you a question. You know, the player Burns for NC State, the big guy, started his career out at Tennessee. Now he's playing for them. Did that remind you of Jordan Davis, who came out of Charlotte, 6'7", 340 pounds, was a 2-star, but was a big-time basketball prospect? Did Jordan Davis ever try out for the basketball team at Georgia?
I don't believe he did, but I can tell you Tom Crean sure could have used him. And I'm sure that watching this tournament, I don't know how much Georgia's football coaching staff's been able to watch March Madness, but if they did, I'd have to imagine at least one point Kirby Smart would be like, man, that man would make a really nice nose tackle. That guy, we'd get him a defensive tackle. He'd make some plays.
Yeah, they tried to get Charles Barkley to walk on and play football when he was at Auburn, and he said, I ain't going to go out there and get hit by those guys. He was a very smart guy. Hey, spring practice is underway, full on for everybody in the SEC. I think Missouri has already had their spring game. They always have it before anybody, and it's really cold when they do it. But got some new faces up there. We all know about the Trevor Etienne thing. Just dumb. I mean, we know that about that. But this Georgia football team, I thought about this yesterday. The last 3 years, the best program in college football. Even though they lost, like a lot of people did, people in the portal, they're still loaded. How loaded are they compared to the previous 3 teams in your measurement?
Well, it's going to be really interesting to see. I mean, to me, just based on what we know right now, I think the offense has a chance to be, one of the best in this run that Georgia's had. Yeah. To me, the big question is going to be what this defense is. And, it's a good problem to have when it comes to Georgia's perspective because, if there's one area you can trust with Kirby Smart, it's the defense. And you look year after year, and especially since I've come back on the beat, they have a good defense, and then you go, all right, there's no way they can follow this up. They just lost 3 or 4 or however many draft picks. There's got to be a drop-off. And maybe there is like 1 or 2 more points per game allowed or something like that. But It's just not very drastic. So, I think this offense, I think they averaged a little over 41 points a game last year in Bobo's first year back as the offensive coordinator. You bring back Carson Beck. You've got a lot of depth at running back. You're very deep at wide receiver. Won't have Brock Bowers, so that is going to make things difficult. But, I think this offense is going to light it up. The defense, to me, is where I have more questions. But if you're a Georgia fan, I think that's the way you would want it between the two, because Kirby's proven that he knows how to evaluate talent, and he and that defensive staff, they're going to coach guys up. And the defense, you can rest assured, will be really good again.
Well, you see where Will Muschamp is an analyst from being co-defensive coordinator. I don't know what that does with his salary or whatever, but what's his role still with the team? You've had Glenn Schumann, Kirby Smart, and Will Muschamp. 3 sets of eyeballs looking at tape and evaluating players. I don't think the average person appreciates what that means. That's like having the dream team defend you in a court of law.
Yeah, Will Muschamp, I think for some people he's a punchline because things didn't go the way he wanted it to at Florida, and it wasn't quite what they hoped it would be at South Carolina. But, he's an outstanding coach, and he's still around. He's a defensive analyst now. We've only had a couple of viewing periods at this point in spring practice, but he's been out there. If you were just watching, you wouldn't think, oh, this guy's out of the game. He's still involved. Yeah. And I think the circumstances were about as good as Georgia could get it. Will's going to take a step back. A big part of it, and Kirby talked about this last week, Will's youngest son, Witt, is going to be a freshman quarterback at Vanderbilt. So, you get the sense Will wants to be around for that, and you can understand that. That's his youngest kid. Wants to be able to watch him play and follow his career a lot closer. But then they go get Travaris Robinson, a guy that I think they're super excited about. T-Rob, if there's any Auburn fans out there, of course, at this point, he's coached just about everywhere. Florida, South Carolina, Miami, came from Alabama, which to me, that was sort of a shot across the bow at that new Alabama staff to go get T-Rob and convince him to come to Athens. So, he was essentially Will's right-hand man for a lot of the Florida and South Carolina tenures and going back to when they were at Auburn. So, it is sort of strange knowing that, we're not going to see Will Muschamp on the sidelines this fall, but I do get this sense he's still very much involved. And I think it's the best of both worlds for a guy at Will's age. Still going to be involved with this team, but he's going to have a little bit more free time to spend with the family.
Well, if you get a chance to talk to Travaris Robinson, ask him about his first game as a freshman at Auburn. Labor Day weekend, 1999, Auburn's playing Appalachian State. Tommy Tuberville's first game as the Auburn coach. I want to prove myself in front of this 90,000 crowd at Jordan-Hare Stadium. The snap goes over the head of the Auburn punter, and Travaris Robinson runs the ball down just before it gets into the end zone. Auburn hangs on to barely beat Appalachian State. Ask him about that story. I still remember it because I did not go to that game that weekend. I was actually in New Madrid, Missouri, dove hunting, and we were at the Fault Line, the name of a bar because of the New Madrid Fault up there, having a few road sodas, and that was like, wow. Travaris Robinson's a great recruiter. He's a great coach, and he's a great, to me, developer of talent. And as far as Will Muschamp, that makes sense. Wasn't his son at Baylor or Macaulay last year up in Chattanooga?
I believe he was at Baylor School, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah. And I know he went to see him play a lot. And heck, man, you got a kid playing college football. And when you talk to people that know Will Muschamp, they love the guy. I know a lot of boosters at Auburn, they love him. Ask Ralph Jordan Jr., ask people, Mr. Louder, they love Will Muschamp. So, you know, if it makes you feel good to take a cheap shot at a guy he's a good guy. I like him a lot. If he ever said he wanted to come back to Auburn for a fourth tour of duty, I think he'd be welcomed back with open arms. All right, offensive side. And I got to ask you, pro day for Georgia, how did Brock Bowers do? Because if he hadn't hurt his ankle last year, he would have been in New York for the Heisman announcement. I really believe he would have.
Yeah, Brock really didn't do a whole lot. Him or Marius Mims, the offensive tackle, probably the two guys from Georgia that have the best chance to go in the first round this year. They're actually planning on doing a private workout. I believe it's going to be on April 10th. So it was one of those situations. Both of them were dealing with hamstrings. So for Brock, a lot of people are like, oh, his ankle must be bothering him from that injury in the season. No, it was a hamstring he had hurt a couple weeks before pro day. So yeah, they mostly kind of just stood around and watched what their teammates were doing. Marius Mims did some bench, but yeah, they're gonna have another workout in early April, and they're gonna get a chance to show out in front of some NFL personnel.
All right. So as far as Etienne, my Cajun friends from Lake Charles and DeRidder say it's Ashawn. I mean, of course, they think they make every name. Smith is Smith-Shawn. I mean, they have to do that. But what's his future now? I mean, look, what he did was dumb. But where does he fit now with that? Because I know that every college kid, when you're 18 to 22, we've all been there. Do some stupid things. He screwed up, and I don't know if that affects NIL deals or whatever, but has he said anything publicly other than since the arrest and he was out within an hour?
Yeah, he hasn't said anything, and I'm not expecting him to. I mean, what I would imagine, he's still going to be with the team. You know, we talked to Kirby on Tuesday, and he said, look, this was a mistake, but it's not going to be one that defines Trevor. And, I imagine, and Kirby's never been one to share what punishment's going to be. That's just not been his style. He doesn't do that. I would be surprised if he plays in that opening game against Clemson, which is pretty significant for Georgia not to have who I think will be their leading running back. But it's been pretty standard for players who wind up getting a DUI to get a one-game suspension. I know a couple years ago at this point, Javon Bullard, he wound up getting suspended after a DUI and missed a game. So, again, Kirby talked about it. We're probably not going to talk to Trevor anytime soon, maybe during the season. But what I told some other folks, I think he's going to become well acquainted with the steps in Sanford Stadium. His conditioning level, I think, is going to be peak going into the summer because I'm sure he's going to get a lot of running in. And like I said, I expect he probably will not play in that opener against Clemson.
All right, look at Georgia. Again, you and I, we talk, you're on almost every week with us. We love having you on. Last year, we know what that narrative was, and it's easy to say that in late March, April, when you're at the beach reading a magazine in June with a beer in your hand. But when you got to that last 4-game stretch, Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Georgia Tech, they were a lot tougher than you expected. Now, this year, you open up August 31st in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Clemson. That'll be pretty much that's a neutral. Auburn, Clemson, they play there. It's going to be a great environment. It'll be incredible, and I hope people, because we were at the SEC championship game, I hope people realize you can't buy paper tickets anymore. Scalpers were out there trying to sell paper tickets, and Billy Roberts and I were out there going, "Did they not get the memo?" But then you got to play at Texas, and you got to play at Ole Miss. It's a tough schedule right now, but I think Georgia's built for it.
I know it's going to be interesting, and I know one thing. I'm sure Georgia is thankful that they got this schedule in a 12-team playoff because think if it was last year, I mean, you have almost no margin for error. And I think, I would be super impressed if Georgia got through this season undefeated. That's not to say that I don't think they're capable, but playing at Alabama, playing at Texas, playing at Ole Miss, I mean, that's really tough. You have a game out there. What if you're playing in the rain and you turn the ball over 3 or 4 times? Sometimes it's just the lucky break. So, yeah, it's going to be a really tough schedule. I thought it was interesting on Tuesday when we talked to Kirby. He was asked about the fact that next year's schedule, they're just flipping the opponents. If you're hosting an SEC opponent this year, you'll go there and vice versa. And
Yeah.
Kirby was like, I'm happy with it because we have, probably the toughest schedule in the country with all these road games.
Yeah.
And now they're going to come to Sanford Stadium next year. And I know Kirby's probably happy. I'll tell you who's the happiest is Georgia fans because honestly, if you go through these last few years, Georgia's had some marquee games on the schedule. Very few of them have been at home. I mean, there's not been a ton of marquee games in Sanford Stadium. So shout out to the season ticket holders because they're gonna finally get what they have been owed in 2025. Having Texas come to Sanford Stadium,
Yeah.
Ole
Oh,
Miss,
God.
Alabama, that'll be nice for those fans who go to all the games.
Yeah, it really will. You look at the SEC right now. You have to talk now about Texas and Oklahoma because they're in football terms they're in. Of those two, if you got to play Texas, but if you end up having to play Oklahoma in Atlanta for the SEC championship, or you had to play Texas in a rematch, who would you prefer right now? The 42,000 feet above from the airplane view.
I mean, if you're looking at it from Georgia's perspective, who I think they'd rather play would be Oklahoma because I think Texas, I need to get a better feel for everything they've returned in the portal, but I think they're going to be in that conversation at the very least for that 12-team playoff. I think Steve Sarkisian's done a really good job. It's just going to be so fascinating this year to look at what having the 16-team conference, just what that's going to look like. I think Texas is going to be part of that upper echelon, and it's going to be fascinating just to see how they do. And then again, Oklahoma, I felt like they made strides last year. I thought there were questions about Venables, but I think that there's reason to be excited. So, yeah, if I had to choose, from Georgia's perspective, I think they'd rather play Oklahoma because I do truly think Texas has the capability of being a playoff team once we get to that point this year.
I do too. And as far as the SEC being, we've loaned out the national championship to Michigan for a year. It's on rental. Still in basketball, trying to get the first national title, golly, since 2012 when Kentucky got one. But you think the SEC will end up being now the premier league, given what the Big Ten is bringing in with Southern Cal and UCLA and Oregon and Washington?
I think it's going to be battles back and forth. I mean, I think that the SEC's definitely given themselves some great teams in Texas and Oklahoma joining. And, I mean, at this point, I'm just really interested to see what the next few years look like. Does the ACC, hold up? Everybody's convinced there's going to be these two major conferences with the Big Ten and the SEC. For the sake of college football, I hope the ACC stays.
I do too.
I don't think it's all that healthy for us just to have two humongous conferences. But, yeah, I mean, I think you're going to have years where the SEC's the top conference and clearly, and then there's going to be sort of that back and forth with the Big Ten. And I know the SEC's sitting pretty. I know that maybe eventually they're going to add other teams. But I'd be pretty content if they just stuck with the 16 they have and rolled it out and let these teams fight it out for a few decades or so.
All right. Another minute or two before you got to go. Recruiting for Georgia right now in the state of Georgia. How does this class look so far, and how does Georgia stand with the top 15, 20 players?
Yeah, I mean, the question right now for Georgia with 2025, and part of it is in the state, is what they're going to do at quarterback. And you've kind of got a three-man race. You got Juju Lewis, who's a USC commit. He's from Carrollton. They are fighting really, really hard to get him. It's not real clear what exactly is going to happen there. The other guy's Matt Zollers. He's a quarterback, I believe. He's from Pennsylvania. Georgia's in the mix. Penn State, I believe Missouri as well. And then Ryan Montgomery, a kid, I believe he's from Ohio, and he's got South Carolina, Florida. So it's one of these situations where you're kind of seeing musical chairs, and Georgia's trying to figure out what exactly they're going to do. Now, a lot of people want Juju Lewis. He's that in-state guy. He's a really talented guy, but he's committed to USC, and USC just had an outstanding weekend. They flipped Justice Terry, who's a five-star defensive lineman from Manchester, Georgia, not too far there from Columbus, Georgia, and getting him and getting another big commit. They have really loaded up. I think what's going to happen is they're going to get Matt Zollers, who I'm really high on. I think he's a guy that is very talented, very athletic. But they got a 2026 commit over the weekend, Jared Curtis, who's the number one player in the 2026 class. And you're kind of reading between the lines and saying, okay, if they got him, would that make Juju Lewis not want to come, knowing that there's another guy that's locked up for 26. So that's sort of what all we're watching, the main storyline in recruiting for Georgia right now. What happens with these quarterbacks? We should know in about a month because Matt Zollers, I believe, is going to commit on April 4th. But it's going to be a whole lot of guessing and a whole lot of innuendo and rumors until then. We're going to see what people are saying and figure out how this thing works itself out.
Well, that's what makes this stuff fun. I mean, it's just the mystery. I know you got a big day ahead of you. Let people know how they can follow you. You put out great work, also a lot on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to start calling it Twix. But you are constantly updating people on Georgia and the SEC, and we really, really appreciate it.
I appreciate that, Rob. Yeah, Jordan Davis Hill on Twitter at Dogs247 as well. And go to dogs247.com. All kinds of recruiting stuff, all kinds of spring practice coverage, all kinds of NIT coverage. The Georgia men's basketball teams in the NIT semifinals. I did not have that on my bingo card this year, Rob, but it's been a busy time of year, but definitely fun and super excited. I appreciate y'all having me on and want to make sure and wish you and everyone listening a happy Easter.
Yeah, happy Easter to you. It is the Holy Week, and absolutely look forward to having you on always, and let's do it again next week.
Sounds great. Appreciate you guys.
You bet. Brendan, Dudley Dawson's going to be joining us in just a minute, hogville.net. Good morning, Dr. Arnoff up there in Panama City, Mosley County, in the panhandle of L.A., Lower Alabama.
Is that where he is?
Brendan, I think that's where he lives, in Panama City. But he's a great fan of this show. Always appreciate it. And one of the things, you look at these guys going out to Southern Cal. Now, that's always happened, the allure. But Southern Cal getting a 5-star defensive lineman, Lincoln Riley doesn't believe in defense. He just thinks he can outscore everybody. And they won 6 games last year trying to do that. That's like Florida State when Bobby Bowden first got there. They would win games, 38-37. Oh, that was a great game. Did you see it? But when they brought in Mickey Andrews out of the Wiregrass, out of Daleville, Alabama, I think is where he's from, came there in 1984, 85. That's when they built up their defense. I look at a program like Southern Cal now going into the Big Ten.
You look like a frog, by the way, Mickey Marotti. Like Frogman on what was it? Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the good guys. He's like, I swear, I interviewed the guy like 1,000 times.
Who is Mickey Marotti?
Yeah, you were just talking about Marotti. No, was it Mickey Marotti? No,
I was talking about Lincoln Riley, the head coach at Southern Cal.
Yeah. Before that, you were talking about Mickey.
I think Jordan was. Yeah.
Yeah, Mickey Marotti. Yeah.
It's very difficult. So I look at Florida, the Gators, before Dudley gets on here with us. And you just have to say to yourself, what in the wide world of sports is going on here? Leaving across Florida's got everything in the world going for them. But I want to ask you right now, in your opinion, what's the number of games, the minimum, Billy Napier wins this year to keep his job, if his job's even in jeopardy?
I don't think his job's in jeopardy. So I think he's as Franz Beer said, he's here through 2025 no matter what.
Yeah.
And that's it. So I suspect that he can win or lose as many games as he wants this year because he's rebuilding. As long as he shows progress in that deal, then he's good. Now, court of public opinion, which was what we deal with all the time, I would think he has, if he starts out going loss, it's not going to be very good for him. And it's not so much does he lose his job? It's more of can you handle staying in the job, because it gets really
a great
tough.
Point. Very good point.
I think people forget that part because when you live in a smaller community like a Gainesville, And Urban Meyer used to talk about that, where he would go out to dinner or lunch or whatever. And one time he walked into Ballyhoo's to have, a meal, and he got booed, when he won 7 games. So,
first off, Urban Meyer's a pretty tough guy. I mean, that loser for doing that. But here's another one for you. Tennessee in 2008, December of 2008, when they fired Philip Fulmer, he'd won 152 games in 16 years, a national championship, couple of SEC titles, a few runners up. When they fired him, I remember saying to all these Tennessee friends of mine in the hunting club, I was saying, look, this will be then they hired Kiffin. I said, he'll be the first of many coaches that you bring in to try to replace Philip Fulmer.
Yeah.
Well, look what it did. Since 2008, when they fired Fulmer, Tennessee has been wandering through the wilderness. 1 year with Lane Kiffin, 3 years with 3-star Derek Dooley. Then you had Eddie Munster Jr., all grown up, Butch Jones. Now you've got Josh Heupel. But 11-win season for Tennessee since 2008. And I'll throw another one at you. Look at Auburn. Had to get rid of Gus Malzahn. His average recruiting class ranked 8th in the country for the 8 years he was there. But they weren't good at developing talent. And he didn't recruit offensive linemen. So, I wanted him to go. But you look at it now, 3 years out from getting rid of Gus, Auburn is in the midst of the worst 3-year cycle in football since 1948, 49, and 50. Coach Earl Brown, as everyone would say, he was a fine, fine man, a Notre Dame man, well-dressed, fine man. But the 0-10 1950 season and a loss to the Wofford Terriers from Spartanburg.
That's a tough loss.
Was a tough one. And they brought in Ralph Jordan, came back from Georgia to take the job at Auburn for 25 years and winning his coach in school history. You got to be careful about just firing them every 2 or 3 years. It's just like the stock market. The one factor more important than any other factor to your success or failure in the markets, financial markets, is customer behavior. People typically buy high and sell low.
That's right.
There's an old saying about a company has really good earnings and the stock sells off $4 or $5 a share down. What's going on? Buy at the wake, sell at the wedding. Does Tennessee admit to Pruitt anymore? Yeah, they do. I think Jeremy Pruitt will be back in coaching. He's one of the greatest defensive minds. He and brother Bill Oliver from Epps, Alabama, over in the Black Belt in West Alabama. The two greatest defensive minds, maybe that I can recall. They're that every year they get the job done. Brendan, I know you're not feeling too good right now, but
just telling Dudley, if you're listening there, buddy, try us again. We couldn't see you. We saw you were there. We didn't see you.
Dudley in the witness protection program, but Franz is on to something. If a coach has got to be worried constantly about if I don't have at least a 4 or 5 year commitment,
yeah,
you got to. It might not be what the fans want to hear, but when you invest money, you've got to have a time frame. What's your buy discipline? What's your sell discipline? And you know what? You look at a football program, and you look at what in a pharmaceutical company. If you look at a stock, there's one thing you look at more than anything: pipeline, drugs in the pipeline, FDA, clinical trials, level 1, 2, and 3. How much they have in their pipeline. Same thing is recruiting.
Well,
Billy Napier bringing in some talent.
Yeah. I think now is, like you've said, Rob, it's the changing landscape. The coaching is going to change. Before, you needed a dynamic coach that was going to draw these athletes in, that was interesting, that could coach well, that you wanted to play for. It took a pretty dynamic personality to get some of these athletes in. Urban Meyer had to get Tim Tebow. It wasn't like he wasn't in the running for that. He had to convince him to come and change a program. So, these type of individuals, I think, are way different now. I think now we're like, well, how much is this athlete going to cost? How much is this coach going to cost? And I think, a lot of, and obviously you still got to recruit, but the recruits don't care about, as we said, facilities. They're not going to care about anything else anymore except for how much you going to pay me to be here, because I'm probably going to be there for maybe 1 or 2 years max. And I'm either going to transfer out or I'm going to go play pro.
All right. Well, they do care about facilities. I mean, they'll get you on campus, but what's the difference in the Hefner Center and the Woltolt Center at Florida or Auburn, or what they have at Tuscaloosa and Arkansas, is the facilities. They'll look at that, and then that conversation is going to be had with, okay, what am I going to get? What are you going to pay me? Dudley Dawson, hogville.net, is on with us right now.
Witness protection.
In the witness protection program. It looks like a hologram right there on there.
The key to a great green screen is great light on your face. We got to get you a ring light. That's what you
we are having issues this morning with computers and stuff.
Hey, listen, we had the wind Monday in Memphis, and was about 50, 60 mile an hour gusts. And that brought with it into Arkansas and Memphis, Mississippi, in the Mid-South, massive rainstorms.
Is that better? Is that better?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. St. Louis Cardinals. There we go.
That's Brady Tiger and the Arkansas Razorbacks.
Yeah. Okay. They look so much like the Cardinals. Of course, the Arkansas Travelers. We know about them in Little Rock. Yes. Dudley, I want to ask you this question real quick. There's a lot of people following what's going on, and give us an update if you can with basketball with Eric Musselman and recruiting for Arkansas, also spring practice. I don't think people have talked enough about one of the assistant coaches you brought from Missouri State, the wide receivers coach. I think he was with Bobby Petrino. I know he was.
Yeah, let's start with basketball.
Yeah.
Obviously, Coach Musselman has not taken a job elsewhere. He's contacted 32. Again, 32 different people in the portal. Wow. So he's either recruiting really, really hard for Arkansas or recruiting really hard for somewhere else. But I think, it looks like he's still going to be here.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's an extension on the table. I'm sure that's going to get signed pretty quickly. But it's one of those things that, you have, he's had 4 great years here, or some people argue that, the regular season hasn't been great, but the postseason has. Which one do you want? Do you want success in the regular season? Do you want success in the postseason? You want both, but there was neither this year. So that's what's been going on with his situation. As far as football, it's one of those things that I'll hear in tomorrow morning. I'll be at practice. It's been wide open. They look really good against themselves. We'll see when August 31st, when they play UAPB, how they look. But I think, as I've said before, I think that the real test will come that next week when they have to go to Oklahoma State. Yeah,
game 2. And Mike Gundy always, 19, 20 years he's been there, just always has a team that is competitive. And he's won a bunch of games there. All right, you got the number 1 ranked team in baseball. We'll get to that in a minute. Football-wise, we talk about, offense, defense, whatever, but Bobby Petrino's offense, when you get to go to practice, how much better are the passing routes? How much better is what they call the route tree? I'm not going to try to get real technical, but people love to say stuff like that. But are the receivers better at catching the ball? Because I've noticed this with Bobby Petrino. Wherever he coaches, say what you want about him. I really don't care if he's a, hard ass. That's what you want. I just want him to win. And he wins everywhere he goes. I'm not predicting Arkansas to win every game, but if you know anything about football, it matters who is in charge. Let's talk about the way he's being received by the players on this Arkansas team. and what Sam Pittman is doing to help the players and Bobby Petrino, close that gap quicker and get some wins.
Here's what I will say is that none of these players remember who he was. They were all 7 or 8, when he was having a success here.
Yeah.
There's a clear delineation between the routes that are being run in practice now than what were being run under Dan Enos. It's just more complicated. It's he's an offensive genius. I've never questioned his coaching, obviously, and he's got them out there. The offense looks better. Period. I mean, I preface it by saying they're going against themselves, but it just looks like you sit there on Sunday and you watch routes as opposed to sit there on Friday and you watch routes. And I think Friday was last year. I thought Dan Enos was going to be okay for this team. He had this back here, and it just didn't work out. It was a personality thing. It was a schematic thing. You have to when you go to practice, you have to just sit there and realize that, as you said, the route tree has more avenues than it did last year.
Yeah, it does. And talent-wise, you start with the offensive line. They move some people around, and you like to have players, and you hear the term interchangeability used a lot. It's just a guy that can play the center, the guard, the tackle. I like that because I've studied brother Bill Oliver, his defense, for years, and he's the only coach I've ever seen that occasionally would blitz 10 or 11. You saw that when he was at Alabama. You saw it when he was at Auburn. Hell, I remember when he was with the Showboats living in Mr. Young's back house over in Central Gardens, Chickasaw Gardens. Trust me. I love that guy. Dudley, you're the guy to write the book. I think you should write a book. And I know a lot of people in Arkansas, they love you. They're going, Dudley Dawson is one of the coolest guys. They've followed your career for a long time. I'd love to have a book written called My Best Conversations at the Bar with the Following Coaches. Because but Bobby Petrino, we all love to point the finger and, cast aspersions and be Pollyanna. Look, you know what? The poet John Keats once said, you can bring back any man from his grave and carve him up and find something wrong with him, find his bad side, whatever. So many people profess to be Christians and all this stuff, and boy, they're the most unforgiving people I've ever seen. You know what? I'll take your word for it, and I'll take the word of the people at the Touchdown Club over in Little Rock. It's a damn good group of people. And for them to accept his apology and for them to bring him back. So, people can say all they want about this guy or that guy. You're around these people. You know Nolan Richardson. You knew Eddie Sutton. I mean, to get to the top and win a national championship, you're going to hurt some people's feelings along the way, aren't you?
Yeah. And, I go back to Bill Keady, who was my high school head coach. Great dude. But when he needed to get all up in my, he did. And it was one of those things, the same thing with, all the people that Bobby Petrino coached here back in the day. They both feared him. They didn't like him, but they respected him. And, that was a thing that, they would, I don't know if he was on fire, what they'd do, but, back in the day, but they loved him as a coach. And, you can see that with this new group. They again, I'm pointing out that they don't understand who he was back in the day. What they do understand is that the route tree, all this stuff, they understand, you can just tell from the words he used, which, by the way, are not the F-bombs that he used to use. That's more been, we got Sam Pittman using those now, just on the offensive line.
Yeah.
But, they can just tell, regardless of them not knowing his reputation, that he is in charge of the offense, that he knows offense, that, this is a guy who, regardless of his off-field decisions, has made those on-field decisions throughout his life that have been very successful.
Yeah. Well, we have Pat Dye Jr. on the show from time to time. He's a sports agent, and he's dad, football coach at Auburn. And Pat Jr. said on this show, because I would never divulge anything said privately, whatever, but he said, most of these kids in my 35 years and over 500 NFL players I've represented, they don't know who my dad was. But by God, their mom and dad, their aunt and uncle, their grandparents, they do. And these conversations it opens a lot of doors for me, he said. He goes, but they'll sit there and go, and you listen here, young man. Coach Dye coached your uncle. He coached your father, whatever they said. And you listen to this man. And so it makes me sad. I do. I hate it. You should respect. You and I, hell, we hold the door open for ladies. You stand up. That's good. And
yeah, you do that. I did that recently, and the lady was so surprised that I hate that. They were so surprised that chivalry is one of the things I try to teach. Sons and daughters and all that, but it's
grandsons.
Yes, and it's amazing to me that is a something that's not expected these days. I mean, I'm right there. I run to get that door open.
Yeah, I do too. And that's a good thing. And I think where we're going, look at these coaches. Frank Broyles at Arkansas. One of my good friends, he sells industrial restaurant equipment, and one of his big accounts is the University of Arkansas athletic department. He said one time he was up there in his company vehicle, and Frank Broyles, he was about to leave to head back to Little Rock where he lived for 15 years. He said Frank Broyles ran him down in the parking lot and said, "Son, you want to keep doing business with the Razorbacks?" He said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "Come here." He walked around the front, looked at his license plate, and he said, "Go Vols." He goes, now I make enough money, I'll take you to the bookstore and go buy your license plate. You can go buy one on your own. Big Daddy. By the way, the earth shook when he left Missouri, in 1958 for Arkansas. They were paying him 10, and Arkansas said, "We'll give you $15,000 a year."
Little did they know what was going to happen. I mean, you can talk about different hires in basketball, baseball, football.
Yeah.
The best hire ever for Arkansas in terms of what it did for the sports program overall. He came in, he raised it to a level that had never been before, both financially and successfully.
1959 to 1989. And that when Arkansas won the Southwest Conference in 1989, that was their 10th conference championship in that 30-year window. They finished in the top 12 in that window 12 times, 15 times. Multiple times in the top 15. They were one of the top 5-6 programs in the country many years. So it can be done. I got to ask you this question, and it might be a diametrically opposing argument from a lot of perspectives.
15 points for Gryffindor.
Word wealth word from CBHS brother Stephen Schonoff. We studied those words, but okay, you've got facilities at Arkansas that are elite. They're second to none. They don't want for anything. Now, and we had this discussion a couple of years ago when Ole Miss was going to do a $350 million facelift on Vaught Hemingway Stadium. Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss people said, "Oh, hold on. Why don't we pump some of that money into NIL?" They got a Grove Collective with over 11,000 members. They got a lot of money. A lot. It's a populist movement. How strong is the Razor's edge compared to some of the other ones? Arkansas's facilities. I guess I had this discussion with a facilities guy at an SEC school who will remain in the witness protection program. But his point was, just when we get all these great facilities on all these schools, it's almost a moot point, because after you tour the facilities and you tour the campus and you do all that stuff, the final conversation isn't going to be about developing you as a man and as a student athlete. It's going to be about, how much are you going to give me?
Yeah, here's what I would say, and I've got a situation.
There's Gary. Okay.
Here.
Hey guys.
Yeah.
Hey, keep going. Yeah.
I've got a situation here where, some people will talk, some people won't, off the record, whatever. What I will say is that the programs that are successful here at Arkansas are getting the money that they need to get.
Okay.
The ones that are not. I mean, it's just It's that simple.
Yeah.
They are behind. And
Yeah.
I think there are great people over there, working on the razor's edge. It's just a situation that I think that this hit them and they weren't ready.
Yeah.
Just,
All
just, just saying it. We had a situation here with the legislature and all that, and it had to be not only a school thing, it had to be a state thing. And
Yeah.
many of these states were far ahead of what Arkansas was ready to do.
Yeah.
They thought they were successful and everything would be fine. But to just be honest, they're behind, and that is, it translates to 4-8.
Yeah. All right, we're going to talk with Gary. We just got a few minutes. I switched some stuff up this week. He's normally on Thursdays, but and then we're going to, and stay with me, Dudley, because I got some more questions for Arkansas. Alabama, Gary, third time in the last 4 years. And I was on X the other night reading stuff. That's a model of consistency, what Nate Oates has done. It's getting, and I saw Winifred E. Wimp Sanderson on the Paul Feinbaum show earlier this week when Roman Harper, proud native son of Prattville, had him on. Awesome interview. I love the man in the plaid jacket. But getting to that Final Four, can this Alabama team do it this year? Let's talk about their run they're in the middle of.
Well, maybe, because, I don't really look at this as a Final Four caliber team based on the entire body of work. And I thought last year obviously was a Final Four caliber team. I thought the team 3 years ago with Herb Jones was a Final Four caliber team. But, maybe this will be the team that breaks through, because, sometimes it's just simply how you play in this tournament. And, there's so much discussion when you go into the NCAA tournament about your conference tournament, about the regular season, and, this team's on a roll and this team's hot. Well, you're on a roll and you're hot until you're not. And what I mean by that is the nature of this tournament is just so different that you can really think you're playing well and you've got a team that's built for the Final Four, and then you run into a bad matchup, you get beat and you get knocked out. And this Alabama team, even though most of the national pundits picked them to lose to Grand Canyon, I thought they had a good draw with Charleston and Grand Canyon. I mean, based on who they played this year and played in the SEC, if you'd have just told me, 6 weeks ago going into the NCAA tournament, Alabama's first two games were going to be against Charleston and Grand Canyon, I'd have taken my chances. So, I thought they had a good draw, and but now you're up against one of the big boys, and North Carolina's a veteran team, and they've got experienced players and talented players and well coached, and Alabama's going to have to play really well. And if Reitzel can't go, that impacts their team, because the way they like to play with a 3-point shot, I think he's probably their best 3-point shooter, and he's got a quick release and he can get it off quick. And we don't know his status, but they're going to play North Carolina a good game. One thing about Alabama's schedule, when you look at the Sweet 16, they've played 5 of those teams. Now, they hadn't beaten any of them. They lost to Clemson and Arizona and Creighton and Purdue and Tennessee twice. But, they've been in these kind of games all year long. So we'll see. I kind of like the fact now that, they're in the hunter position and a lot of pressure on North Carolina to advance. So who knows? Maybe it's a team that will get past the Sweet 16 that I didn't really think was. I think going into the tournament, the Sweet 16 would have kind of been the ceiling, and you'd have to feel good about this team reaching the Sweet 16. But now that they're there, you want to win. So we'll see what they do.
Yeah, you look back at last year, and I had to go back and look who were the Final Four teams last year. San Diego State, Florida Atlantic were in the Final Four last year. And my beautiful wife, Petra, who was born in 1963 but turned 29 yesterday.
That's right.
We have done everything we can to try to figure out these brackets. It just won't work. It's how you play on that day. That's what's going to be the case with Alabama and North Carolina coming up. I mean, it is, to get to the Sweet 16 is a chore. You have to have everything go right. You have to have the draw right. You have to play right. You have to avoid injuries. You have to schematically, again, and that's the second time I've used that word, schematically, you have to go up against a team that you can have success against. I mean, whether it's a 1-3-1 defense gave Arkansas fits this year. And I don't understand why every team didn't come out this year in a 1-3-1. It just gave them fits. And it's you just have to go that day do the best you can. And, again, Nate Oates, you got to give him a lot of credit.
Yeah.
Again, for I will say what he's done on the court. And absolutely, he seems like a fine man, and they have gotten to this position, in a year that maybe, like you said, this was the ceiling.
Yeah. Gary, is it true that 70,000 students from Grand Canyon University were in attendance at the game Sunday?
Well, I tell you, I think a lot of us, now that they've been in the national spotlight, are trying to figure out the whole
the
deal.
deal?
I looked up their enrollment on Wikipedia, and it's 100 and something thousand, and most of those 100 and something thousand have never even been to Arizona.
Wikipedia, that's your best source.
So it's a unique situation. I will tell you this: they had a lot of people there. They ran some kind of charter where, I think if you had a 1945 Philadelphia nickel, you got room and board.
The pulse check, Gary.
Yeah, they took you up there. If you said, "Hey, man, I like basketball," well, you're a Grand Canyon fan, so hey, give them credit. I mean, for how they've been able to put that together, and they got Bryce Drew as their coach, of course, coaching in the SEC at Vanderbilt, and his brother Scott at
and had Ben Marley back in the day,
yeah. So but they're a very athletic team. They're big, they're physical. I was, like a lot of people watched the game, I was kind of trying to figure out what they were trying to do on offense, and we never could quite figure it out. But good. Even though Kellogg and Barkley and Kenny Smith all picked Grand Canyon to win, I liked Alabama in that game, and glad they got through it. As we're talking about, matchups are so important, and we see last year Florida Atlantic and San Diego State, who's back in the Sweet 16, the team that beat Alabama last year that played for the national championship. You still don't want to get knocked out by Grand Canyon. I'm just telling you, and especially with the way it's gone for the SEC this year in the tournament. So it was a big win. It was a big win in that respect.
Yeah, and I respect Nate Oates for not bitching and moaning and whining about having to go to Spokane. I do, and look, love you, Bruce Pearl. Don't do that. Fans can do it.
Auburn got sidetracked, guys. Yeah. They just did. And I kind of thought the same thing. Initially, when I saw it, I thought, did Auburn get screwed a little bit? Yeah, I thought they did. But you're in the tournament. You're playing a team from the Ivy League. Just go play. You should win that game regardless of where you play it. Yale had to travel to Spokane, too, from the East Coast. So
it's a lot further.
I'm with you. I'm with you there.
And they had to study. They had to study, too.
They did. Yeah. Hey, it may mean more in the SEC, but I'm not sure that relates to the books the way it does.
The Ivy League motto is "It takes more."
Yeah. So, but again, that's I'm not going to back off what we talked about. I think the SEC was one of the best leagues in the country. But as Dudley was saying, you get into this tournament, man. Yeah. It's a crapshoot, and the SEC is really good. And even the second day, Auburn could have won, Florida could have won. So. It could have been a little bit different. Now that first day was rough. I'm not going to lie.
Hey, man, and the national writers, because of the success that the SEC's had in football, and because they're
ready to pounce.
They're just jumping off the roof trying to body slam the SEC.
Yeah, they were ready. It doesn't matter that we played 30-something games to get to this point. But it's like Bruce Pearl said after the game. I think it was him. It might have been another SEC coach that said, unfortunately. This shouldn't be the barometer for your season, but it is, and this is the way that a lot of people, grade it, and it was a poor tournament for the SEC, but you got Alabama and Tennessee left, and the remarkable thing about these two programs is they're both really good programs, and of course Arkansas came in 30 plus years ago, but of the traditional 10 SEC programs, you could probably say that Alabama and Tennessee are the most successful behind Kentucky.
No
yet
question.
Neither one of them have ever been to a Final Four. So
here's the debate we're having in Arkansas right now among the fans, not among the writers, but among the fans. Eric Musselman is 48-42 in conference play during his time here, that's not as good as Mike Anderson was. But Mike Anderson never got past that first weekend. Right. Obviously, Eric Musselman has. Which do you want? Do you want success in postseason, or do you want the success in regular season? That's been the debate here. Those who want him to move on, talk about the regular season. Those who are smart and know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the postseason, because that's that he's had the best run of success here in the postseason since Coach Richardson.
Yeah,
I agree, and you have to have a still pretty good regular season to get into the NCAA tournament. So
yeah,
when you balance the fact in the Elite Eight runs that he's made, I'm with you. I think it was a down year this year. It's just somehow it got off the rails and they couldn't get it back on track, even though they were a talented team. But
Too many
based
Chiefs,
on
not enough Indians. Too many Chiefs, not enough Indians.
right,
yeah.
But based on his track record, you would expect next year that they're going to be back in the NCAA tournament. And you're right. When he's gotten in the NCAA tournament now, he's punched the right buttons, and they've been so close to a Final Four. So, yeah, I think with the way the game is now, if you can get in the NCAA tournament and make a run, I would swap that for a SEC championship or tournament championship, because ultimately
I think the UK would right now. Still,
yeah.
he didn't even get to the tournament this year. And he still has won more postseason games in his 5 years here than any other coach in the SEC.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. So I'm
Gary, Kevin Skarbinski pointed out on Monday's show, the first 6 years Cal was at Kentucky, 5 trips to the NCAA, 1 to the NIT, 22-4 in the tournament, 4 Final Fours, 1 national championship. And by the way, I don't think the pronghorn antelopes go down into Arizona much. Maybe they've got they ought to be the Gila monsters. I'm just going to say that. And their 180,000 student body, they make Arizona State look like a commuter college.
Yeah, well, the Lopes are, they were ready for their moment.
They were.
And fortunately, Alabama won it. But real quick on Cal, and then I've got to go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I was
Okay.
late. For some reason, I was thinking it's Thursday. But
Sorry about
Wednesday's
that.
actually,
Let people know how they can follow you too. Though.
Yeah,
when you tag
Wednesday's
out.
actually
Look at my shirt, by the way.
day for me normally. But what really hurt Cal is when he first got to Kentucky. And, they won the 1, but, man, they had some dominant teams. And if he could have gotten another, had 2 or 3, he could probably, be in a little better shape. Now, he's going to come back. But, I understand Kentucky fans, what their expectations are. What he's done the last 3 or 4 years in the NCAA tournament is unacceptable. I mean, it's for their program, their level, it's downright embarrassing. So they better get it straight. On Twitter or X or Twix, if you combine them, at Gary Harris Gary Harris _ WVUA, and on Facebook, Gary Harris WVUA 23. Thanks, guys.
Hey,
I'll be on time. I'll be on time next week.
All right, let's do it again next week. Thank you so much. Love it. That's what I'm calling it, Twix now. It's just, like the cable guy. Well, I listen, Roy D. Mercer. Listen, how long you gonna be out there? Listen, by God, I'll be out there Twix 1 and 2. Yeah, Twix 1 and 2. But why not go with Twix and have like sort of a shadow photo of Roy by God Mercer. Listen, my boy Raymond's out there at your store. We've been trading with you for the last 10 years out there. By God, you giving them pills to my wife, Sharon Jean, got them migraine headaches. She come home, she done lost her drive. I met her at the door the other day, wrapped in saran wrap, and I didn't get so much as a bead of sweat off of her. By God, how long are you going to be down there at your office? Well, by God, I'll be down there between 4 and 5. But Twixt, wouldn't want to use proper grammar. All right.
2 shows nightly. Rob Browne will be here at the Grove in Lowell all week.
Hey, what does your shirt say? Because we're getting
there goes
hologram. I can't read it.
There goes my bracket. It was VCU back in the day when they made their run to the Sweet 16. Yes. So yeah. I purchased this shirt and I wear it at least once or twice during the tournament because it's always accurate.
Yeah, it is. The brackets this year were brutal. Everybody thought, like they said, Oakland, California. No, that Oakland, they're from Minnesota. That school. Okay, so a couple of questions here, and I got a bunch of people texting me. Cheryl Chambers watches about every day over in Memphis, and she wanted to know about this year's tournament. You've got 8 of the top 16. This was also some facts provided by Shoney. 8 of the top 16 are 1 or 2 seeds. You got 1 double-digit seed. 9. Go State! NC State Wolfpack. Now, Tommy Kane, Wolfpack for life, Mr. Wolf. He was on the show with us Monday talking some ACC and SEC. Look at the bracket that NC State is in and look at the bracket Houston is in. Wouldn't that be bat split crazy if those two played again? Oh, golly. I love March.
Yes, and it's the amazing thing is that both Petra and I, our bracket early on got busted, as they say.
They were
but
ugly.
but
Ugly.
we took ones and twos a lot to get to the Final Four. So we're still alive. We may not be winning at the moment, but we've got more points available. And that is one of the things that hasn't happened in a long time is these ones and twos getting to the Sweet 16. As you said, 8 of the 16 were expected to be there. Usually they get upset along the way. Somebody gets knocked out, but we're still alive. My bracket may be busted, but we are still alive for the ultimate prize, which is just pride. At the end, nobody's offering us any money there, but it's just.
Yeah, well, it's fun to do well. I've won the office pool a couple of times and been runner up. First loser, second place.
Gotcha.
But I'll throw something at you.
Ricky Bobby.
Coach Cal, that's right. If you ain't first, you're last. That's right. Look, Coach Cal said what we've been saying on the show, and you've been part of the conversation the last few years, and that is maybe the model that I'm using just doesn't work anymore. We got a bunch of 18, 19-year-old kids going out against 23s and 24s. That's what we've been saying is you get into March Madness and you start playing these schools that guys have been together for 3 or 4 years. Some cases with the virus protocols, 5, 6, 7, hell, who knows? There's some 30-year-olds out there playing. But that is a big deal. Look at Brigham Young in football. Chuck Oliver, my friend in Atlanta, Southern Sports Today, does a great show on right after we go off the air, by the way. The king of college football in the South, he said, you get banging against BYU on the line of scrimmage. You got 18, 19-year-old 5-star, 4-star linemen going against a 24, 25-year-old guy who rode a mountain bike around some country or around the country for a couple of years, getting doors slammed in his face every day, looking like Michael Douglas and falling down with the white shirt and the black pants. You get pretty tough, and those are dedicated, and some of them take a year off after their mission. There's a big difference in 18 and 19 and 23 and 24, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I can remember what I was like at 18 mentally. And yes, physically you're right, but mentally too. I mean, you have gone, and experienced life. We have Petra and I have 4 kids. I love to hear them talk about the problems and the adversity they're going to. And I always say, you're adulting now. You're adulting. Yeah. And that's what happens in collegiate football and collegiate sports. It doesn't matter. You're adulting and you're playing against a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid who's worried about how much money he's going to get in the NIL. John Daly had a great tweet yesterday. He said, you got an offensive lineman who's getting barbecue and he's snapping to a quarterback who's getting $3 or $4 million. How's that? You have, as a coach, you have to deal with that now.
Yeah. Well, I think about this. We're the same age, Dudley. Think about our freshman year in college. How many times?
No, I don't want to.
I mean, mine was my first quarter. I was, up there with John Blutarski and Daniel Simpson Day. Has no grade point average. All classes incomplete. Gentlemen, I'm sure you'll all be glad to know I've notified your local draft boards that you're all fit and eligible for military service. Mm-hmm. Now, do you have anything to say? So think about it.
And the best thing was my late great friend Charles Valentine and I came up here in May. So I had the whole summer not going to classes, just working basketball camps and stuff to experience college. And experience college I did.
Yeah. Well, and see, you think about what the portal is. When you and I and all of us listening, we have people listening like my dad, who's 95. Guys transferred back then. It's been going on forever. During the war between the states, you had bounty jumpers. People would get a bounty and sign up and then leave and go do it again in another county or another state. It's always been going on. But if you hold your children's hands and walk them through adversity, they will never learn the lessons of life. Bird, the mother eagle, never goes back down to retrieve the eaglets when they leave the nest. My mother told me something I'll never forget when I was just graduating from college and I was home briefly before I moved out, because my first interview I got hired. She said, let me tell you something, with vodka in hand. She said, nothing will destroy the relationship between a mother and her children, especially her daughters, if after they've graduated from college, they move back in for too long. And she said, parents give you two things, roots and wings. She said, Rob Jr., start flapping. I'll never forget that speech.
Yes.
But it's the best thing that ever happened to all of us. And that's why the portal, it's like, look, son, grind it out. Because you know what? If you're a kid and you go to Arkansas and you get a degree from Fayetteville, from the Walton College of Business, come on. Are you kidding me? I'm in the state of Arkansas a lot. You talk about a tight-knit group of people. Hey, let's say you're a finance major or accounting and you want to get into investment banking. Well, but I don't want to move to New York. Go to Little Rock to work for Stephens, the largest off-Wall Street investment bank in America. Last time I checked, Warren Stephens has a lot of money in his savings account.
Still does.
Very smart man. Yeah. Very smart man. So your NIL may not come when you're 18 or 19, but wouldn't you rather it come when you're 25 and 30 and 35 with 4 or 5 kids running around the house? That's the value, the lessons of life.
Hey,
if you quit now because this is too tough, you quit everything.
Yeah, Patriot and I are going to see our beautiful grandson, Arthur D, the A Train Dawson.
I love it.
I don't know how. I'm sure our son, and we're going to talk about the A Train when we get there. But the problem I'm having is I want to just impart everything this week. I just want to tell him everything this week, and he's just a month old, so he can't get it. But I'm going to sit there and I'm going to go. I'm going to try. It's one of those things when once you get to be a grandpa, and once you get to be a grandma or Bam and Bunny, and I wanted to be Bamf. I'll let y'all figure out what that means. But we can't wait to get there. But it's one of those things. Basically, I'm going to tell him I love him and don't be a wussy.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Sunday night, my wife Audrey had gone. It was Sunday or Monday. Went up to the borough, Jonesboro, and got all kind of baby gifts for this shower for the yet to be born Robert Alexander Meadows, my grandson, coming here April 24th. That's the launch date. I call him, exactly, Alexander the Great. So she had she goes, I need some boxes. And we were over at the farm at the hunting club, and so to put all the gifts in. So I found a couple of boxes of Migra shotgun shell, cases of shells. And so she wrapped them in the shotgun shell. They make great gift boxes, by the way. So hint to you, Alexander the Great, I'll be taking you duck hunting a lot. But it's fun. You're right. But the thing is, if you quit because this is too tough when you're 18 or 19, you're going to start quitting everything tough that comes your way in life. Mm-hmm. And you teach these lessons to your kids. You got to do it the younger, the better, and that's why coaches are leaving as head coaches their lifetime dream to be a major head college football coach and going to the NFL and being a position coach. We need to be thinking about this. That's why I'm telling you, the free market will fix it. You know why? Remember the build up to Y2K for about 5 years? Oh, the world's going to come to an end. I kept saying to people, what are you talking about? And it was the biggest non-event since the last ice age. People, it ain't the dreading in life that's so bad, as Henry B would say. It ain't the doing in life that's so bad. It's the dreading. Just get to work. Don't hit the snooze button. Try this.
Yeah, you're not promised tomorrow. You're not promised tomorrow. My parents were told back on October 21st, 1981, that I would not survive the night after a car wreck. I have lived 15,481 days since then. Wow. I may not be handsome. I may not be cool. I'm tough as freaking nails.
You're all of the above. You're a great guy. I didn't know this. Yeah. I mean, there are times people you just said it. You always will remember these pivotal moments in your life. And what did you do? You get sucker punched in a bar at 3 a.m. How do you respond? You get knocked down, you get back up. That's life. Greatest lessons in life is Jim Valvano. I watched Survive and Advance the other day. He goes, if there are 3 things you can do every day, you can laugh, you can think, and you can cry. If you do all those things, you have a great life. And I'd recommend to anybody that doubts themselves, start betting on yourself, and not listen to what other people say. What did Gandhi say? I'll never allow other people to walk through my mind with their dirty feet, and treat the word impossible as motivation. But this time of year,
this beautiful woman over here that I'm married to broke up with me when I was 17. Said I was too cocky. I was too confident. I didn't understand it back then because I was a football, basketball, track star. I was dating a homecoming queen. What was there not to be cocky about? But she broke up with me.
Other than that.
Yeah. She humbled me, but 27 years later, I married her, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life with her. And, that's how you win. You don't win on a field. You don't win on a court. You win in life.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I remember my brother-in-law played football at Virginia Tech going up there, and he'd been out of there for 9 years. And we were just killing time before my sister Susan's first child was born. So we drove from Roanoke over to Blacksburg one Sunday afternoon and go into the football complex, into the training room. He'd been gone 9 years, and he wasn't a star player for him. He played 4 years from Rich Creek, Virginia, and everybody in there came up to him, gave him a hug. Because when you go through tough times, you will build the closest friendships in your life. And you learn not to quit. And that's why we love sports so much. And every generation always says, oh, y'all got it so easy. You should have been what we went through. I mean, we all know that, but that's part of the rite of passage.
As they say, yesterday is history. Today is a mystery. Tomorrow is a gift.
And what did Skinner say? Tuesday's gone. Oh, man. By the way, just so you'll know, Dudley, I had one of my clients the other day said, hey, we've got about 500 plus CDs. If you'd like them, make a bid. And I made a bid, done. Bought the entire inventory. And I looked in these 7 boxes, and I've seen them because I've been to my client's house for years.
Gotcha.
It is the best of Bob Dylan, ZZ Top, Leonard Skinner, Willie Nelson, the Stones, the Who, LL Cool J, the Drifters. It's every genre.
People who didn't know what auto-tune was.
Yeah, that's right. But you talk about some just incredible stuff. I love it. Look, let's wrap it up now. Everybody, thanks so much for watching. And again, support all of our sponsors, like the great folks at the Vitamin Shop in Oxford and Olive Branch, Mississippi, Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the Square in Collierville, Tennessee, and every one of our sponsors, like Tom Martin's Body Shop. Check them all out on our website. And let me say this too. Dudley Dawson, Gary Harris in Tuscaloosa. Earlier on the show, we had Jordan Davis Hill, 24/7 Sports on Georgia. We bring in the best guests. We recruit the best talent. It's all about keeping that pipeline going. But catch him, hogville.net. And what's that Twitter, that Twix feed? Twix is the new name for it.
It is Dudley E. Dawson, so DED Dawson. It's DED Sports on the Twitter or X or whatever it is. But mostly I'm Petra Dawson's husband, and I'm Arthur D., the A-Train's grandpa.
Yeah, I love it. And you know what? We'll be back on tomorrow. Got a great show in store for it. Already Thursday. It's Holy Week. Happy Easter, everybody.
Next Wednesday, there will be a picture of me holding that baby behind me.
And he lives in Lancaster, PA?
Yes.
You know who lived up in Lancaster in Amish country, don't you? Ishmael Borg. Think about that, Kingpin. Why would a bowler need a manager? Why would a bowler need a manager? Well, you need a friend. You need to, we're out of here. Get better. Brendan Martin, our executive producer. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Tell your friends and smash that subscribe button on YouTube. See you tomorrow. Thank you for watching.
Out.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.